Welcome to Through the Glass Recovery Podcast, where we believe that connection is the opposite of addiction, vulnerability is the antidote to shame, and that recovery isn't just rewarding, it's also a lot of fun. We're your hosts, Steve and Julie. Listen as we get together with friends to shed light on the hard things, talk about the other side of addiction, and how we create a life so full there's no space left for alcohol.
In this episode, we talk about how we are working to overcome people-pleasing in order to start saying no. It's easy to put others' wants and needs before our own and to lose ourselves in the process. And it turns out that leads to resentment more than it leads to fulfillment. Listen as we talk about some tools we use to gain confidence in saying no.
You've been listening for a while. We'd love to hear what you think. Give us a comment. Send us an email with a topic suggestion at www.throughtheglassrecovery.com.
So we are here tonight with our friends, Kelsey, Antje, and Sonia. So nice to have you guys all here tonight. It's a ladies only night plus Steve, which we don't do very often. So I'm going to have everybody introduce themselves. Kelsey, do you want to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Kelsey. I'm 31, born and raised in Minnesota. I'm a Minnesota girl. I am just over 13 months sober, and I have spoken about my journey since day one. I actually started a TikTok that just held myself accountable, but also I wanted to create a community and have been sharing on there ever since and love these conversations. So super glad to be here.
Really cool and really glad to have you here.
Mm-hmm.
Next, we have Sonia, and Sonia is the creator and owner of Everbloom. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I am Sonia. I'm 44. I was born and raised in Toronto, Canada. I moved to the US when I was 19 for school, and I stayed here, and I've been sober for almost 6 years. I recently launched a recovery startup called Everbloom, and we provide small online group sobriety meetings where the groups are matched based on compatibility. So either by goals, by their life situations, spiritual beliefs, so they can really feel a connection with a sober community. And we kept the size of the group so small so everyone can share, ask for feedback, get advice, and help set their goals and intentions.
Really
Awesome.
cool.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. And then last but not least, we have Antje, who is back for the second episode.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me again, Julie and Steve. It's nice to be here. So I'm Antje, I'm 45, and I have 2 kids. They're 15 and 12. I'm married, and I'm 11 and a half months sober.
Yay!
And
Awesome!
two weeks away from my first year. And yeah, I'm already thinking about how I'm going to celebrate that. Yeah, I started my journey wanting to moderate and have tried that for 1.5 years, not to drink during the week and just on the weekends, but then couldn't keep that up and fell back into drinking every night, and then realizing that, you really probably have to call it quits for good. And that was tough at first, but I'm glad I did it. So.
We're really glad you did too. You'll have to let us know how you decide to celebrate a year. You're getting us so close.
I have some ideas.
Awesome. Yeah, you'll have to let us know. Steve and I were also talking. It's been a really long time since we've said how long we've been sober. So I just hit 15 months. And Steve?
I hit 21 months today.
Yeah. Cool. So yeah, we should probably check in on how long we've been sober every once in a while too.
Mm-hmm. Sober check-in.
So anyway, to introduce our topic for tonight, people-pleasing seems to be a common theme for those of us in recovery. Like we ran ourselves into the ground trying to please everyone in hopes that it would fill the massive void in our lives. I call myself a recovering people pleaser as much as I call myself a recovering alcoholic. So today we're going to talk about saying no. From everything to saying no to a drink offered to saying no to a party you don't want to go to. When have you had to say no? Was it hard, and have you gotten better at it? And how has learning to say no played a part in your recovery?
This is a good topic.
What you got, Kelsey?
Yeah, I could, I don't know how much time we have, but this was hard for me. I am also a recovering people pleaser 100%. That's why I drank. I could make everyone happy and continue to abandon myself. And eventually I got to a point where I sat alone in a room with myself and had no idea who I was, because I was everything to everybody and nobody to myself. And that's really when I started to realize that alcohol and me were not a good fit. But boundaries have been something that I've been practicing since I got sober, saying no to things and to people and to events that I used to just say yes to all the time. I realized that a lot of the things that I went to and showed up to were not things I wanted to be at. And that was really hard to realize, that I was really showing up as a lesser version of myself in so many ways, because I was just there trying to make everybody happy at the expense of my own happiness. And it's gotten easier over time, for sure, saying no to things. And if there's an event that I know is going to be really difficult, or where everybody's drinking and I just am not up for it, I will say no. And I would say initially, like, I would over explain, right? Like, I can't make it because I'm not feeling well and I have to get up early tomorrow and I have to work out and I'm feeling stressed because the holidays are coming up, and like these long paragraph text messages. And now I just am like, I can't come, or I'm not up for coming. And I've been really lucky, I think, in the people in my life that know me and care about me now just say, okay. Which is another part of this, is you find out pretty quickly who your true people are. And that's been my experience with saying no.
When you start saying no, those people either show up or they disappear fairly quickly. It's almost like when you start the saying no process, it snowballs itself. You can feel that sense of self start coming back, because you actually made a decision instead of giving it away.
Yeah.
Like you said, going to events or doing things that other people liked to do. I remember it's being told, you like to do this, why don't you go and do this? And it's like, okay. And I just, I guess that's what I like to do. And then I would go and do that. And I'd be drunk the whole time, but I enjoyed the event because I was trashed, not because I was present at the event. I never gave the event a chance.
There's been a lot of me that, I don't know, when I quit drinking, my whole first 6 months was just diving into authenticity. Who am I really? And I have for so long met everybody else's expectations and thought I liked it. That once I stopped, what were you going to say?
Or made up what you thought they expected of you.
Right. And I thought that was fulfilling. So I'm going to do this thing because that's what I think I'm supposed to like. And then I would feel kind of good about myself because people would be like, you're so great for doing that. And I had to really sit there and figure out what I even actually like and don't like doing, because I just didn't have any idea. And the other thing I've learned is that I tend to box myself in, like a hobby that I may have had at one point. I'm known as the person who knits. I loved knitting forever. Now I'm like, I still feel like I have to, because that's what's expected of me. I'm like, I'm kind of bored and I don't really want to knit anymore. But I had to really give myself permission to not do all of those things that I've just always done, and kind of explore what I really like and don't like, which is so sad at 40 years old that I don't even know what I actually enjoy.
It's either sad or now you get the joy of figuring it out.
Yeah, that is true. It is definitely an adventure and it's discovery, and that is cool.
I will say one more thing on this, is that I've noticed a beautiful gift that has come out of this unexpectedly, is that I have now allowed the people in my life to say no to me without feeling any shame, any guilt. They know that, like, if I tell Kelsey I don't want to show up somewhere, that's okay. She's not going to push. She's not going to care. She doesn't need a reason. She respects it. And that's been really good and beneficial for a lot of my friendships and relationships.
That is a really cool point.
Mm-hmm.
I never thought about it that way, but that is a really, really good point.
Mm-hmm.
I'm testing the water more in my professional life where I'm starting to feel more confident to say no to some things and even practice not to apologize for it. But like I always have to erase this. I'm sorry. And I'm like, nope, erase this. You don't have to be sorry for it, right? You can just say this is not working. And some other time I will do this or so. You know, my private life, this is not, or home life, this is all not so easy. There's definitely a difference, but I'm hoping that by saying no in my professional life and not being apologetic about it, that I can carry that over one day and be more confident to just say no to things I really don't want to do. Because what happens a lot is that I get angry with myself that I let other people walk all over me. And then I turn that inward, that anger, to, you know, drinking or like just being really mad and irritable, and let it out on like my kids or my husband, you know, who have not caused the problem. And that's something I need to fix, but I'm not there yet. So I'm admiring Kelsey for with 13 months sober, having made such big steps forward. And I'm just kind of dipping my toes into that in my professional life where I feel a little bit more confidence that I'm allowed to say this or even to delegate it to someone else. So if I'm not taking it on, then to say somebody else is going to do that for me that is adequate for this and should be doing this, you know, just moving it forward, which I didn't used to haven't done before. Yeah.
Yeah. Is anybody else just overly apologetic about, Steve's talked about this a lot, but I'm like, if I even sort of sound like I'm about to say no to somebody, I will apologize 5 different ways before the word no comes out. Like, like, I'm so sorry and I really apologize, but it's bad. And as Steve taught me early on, he has like this no apologies thing where
what I did was is I defined what sorry meant to me. So then after I wrote down my definition of what sorry is, I then went out into the world, and if it didn't fit that definition, I had nothing to be sorry for. I had nothing to apologize for. So I would sit in a conversation and it would get thrown back at me, and then I would say my piece, and then I'd be like, I feel like saying sorry right now. I literally, and I'm, no, it doesn't fit my definition. I didn't do anything wrong here. So I sat quietly, and it was hard. Like it was not easy. And as I sat there, I realized that silence puts the onus back on the other person instead of you taking it away from them. Every time you apologize, you take responsibility of that event or even that piece of the conversation, and you pull it back and you give it to yourself. So now you end up taking your own emotional responsibility for the situation, and then you take theirs. So now you're carrying the weight of 2 people instead of just the one, and you actually kill the conversation.
yeah.
You end up owning both sides, and you don't allow them to own theirs. So as soon as I held myself accountable to my own definition, I allowed them to hold, and people are actually really good if you let them be. Problem is we never let them be because we said sorry for them before it happened. So when you don't take it away from them, they're like, oh, this is my problem. And then you actually move forward. And what comes with that is self-confidence.
Yeah. I think I'm often too afraid that somebody's mad at me, you know, like the feeling that somebody else has, that if I say no, they're going to hate me, or if I say no, they're going to be angry that I didn't do this. And that the understanding that I'm not responsible for how somebody else feels when I say no, because that's my business, that I can't do this right now. That is for me a super hard concept. I can't. I have a really hard time with this, and I'm not quite sure how am I gonna. Any advice how to get over this? Like I just cannot
It's in the
get there.
practice of it. It
Yeah.
really is. The more you
Mhm.
just don't say sorry and you're met with somebody who's like, okay, cool, no problem. And then they just move on and you're like, you're not mad. And if you do that often enough, I think it gets easier. I'm not by any means going to say I'm a pro at it, but
Mhm.
when I have said no, I've even taken long-standing volunteer positions that really just haven't served me for a long time and I was just doing to make people happy. And I've kind of, let some of those go and sent that email that just says I'm stepping down from this position. And I mean, it was like the one where I just wanted to apologize and I was cringing to hit send. And it just comes in with, okay, no problem. Thanks so much for the time you put in. We'll find somebody else. And it was great. And I was like, oh, this isn't as bad as I thought it would be. But I think the more we do that, the less guilty we feel for saying no.
I think Antje needs some like tools, right? Like, so the first few times you do it, you need to be ready to do it. Like, I'm going to say nothing, or I'm going to say thanks a lot and like walk away. You just have to like psych yourself up to do it the first few times.
Mhm.
It's start out with a conversation that you don't think is going to be that difficult.
Yeah.
Because if you do it with a hard conversation, the silence that you sit in is awkward as hell. It's weird. It feels really weird to do it. Small, simple situation. It'll come up. When your mind's ready for it, it'll happen. It happened with me just organically. Like I thought, I wrote it down. It didn't happen right away. If you start thinking about it and then you find yourself in a situation where you're like, crap, why the hell did I say sorry for that? I'm not responsible. And then you go back to it and then have that conversation again. Like if you circle back and then try and correct it afterwards, you start teaching yourself that I don't have to go back to it because I can own it over here instead.
Yeah.
I meant just more in general to just to say no is hard when I worry about the reaction or how that other person might feel. So one of the things that I've tried is, for example, here's a really good example. I was approached by a class to be the class representative for my son's school. And I was like, this is like the nightmare come true for me. I am not that kind of person when we have these meetings. I'm in the corner talking to no other parent. I can't do this. And I'm supposed to be the class representative. Why is she reaching out to me? I'm not doing this. But I was about ready to reply to that email to say, of course I will do this because this is me, right? And I hated it already. And I was like, why am I? And then I was trying to tell myself, it's not going to be that bad. You're going to grow in this. This is the first time you're going to do this. It's going to be something new. And I'm thinking, and my husband is going to tell me, are you nuts? You never wanted to do this. You barely show up to those things because you are so socially anxious about this stuff, right? Why are you? And so before I wrote this email, then the new step for me of new me is to say, okay, honey, here's this request. I really don't want to do this and I can't say no. Can you write this email for me? So then we sit together and he just says, you don't have time right now. He needs to go somewhere else and ask someone else. And I'm like, I can't say this. He's going to hate me. Like he's going to hate my son for it, right? And so you're in this dilemma and he's like, what's the problem? You're spread so thin with other stuff. You don't need to be this person, right? And I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to trust the process and I'm going to write this the way he says I'm supposed to write this. And then I send it out. And to this day, I feel bad about it. I have to honestly say, to this day, I feel my son is probably have some kind of repercussions from that because I said no. And to this day, they haven't found a class representative. And it's all my fault because nobody else wants to step up. But why was I supposed to step up, right?
How many parents are there? How many parents are there?
25.
Okay, so it is not solely your responsibility to fill that spot. Every other parent said no too.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're on the side of all the other parents. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if everyone notices this too, but like something we all have in common, I feel like, and the part of the reason we drink, we cannot sit in that discomfort.
Exactly.
And so whether it's like talking over it or like staying busy and doing something, it's like sometimes you just have to like literally just sit on your hands and like let it wash over you and be uncomfortable. And it's like the hardest thing. I feel like I just started maybe being able to do it and not reacting to like get rid of that discomfort. What can I do to get rid of this? Well, I'll do this. I'll do this. I'll do this. Like, no, just do nothing.
That's a good point. That's what I'm practicing too, is trying to sit with it and just let it be and say, hi, this is what it is, but I'm doing this and it's going to get easier. You're right. I'm actually doing that too.
No, I was going to say it reminds me of and you had mentioned how your son is probably like, what the heck, mom? And it reminds me of a story. Believe it was Brene Brown on her podcast. She was saying she was invited to a conference at her son's school and she told her son, I'm not up to it. I'm not going to go. And he looked at her and he said, I didn't know we could do that. And she taught him in that moment, right? That you don't have to go to things you don't want to go to. And like so much of my upbringing was like, no, you show up with a smile. You hug that person, you show up, you do the dance, you go home. It doesn't matter how you're feeling. You just show up. And you might be thinking, your son's thinking, what the heck, mom? But he could be thinking, dang, that's cool. She said no, she didn't want to do it. And now I can do that. And she'll support me. And like, that's a really cool lesson that I think so many of us never got.
Yes. That is a really good point too. Yes, because my son has the same tendency. He actually was stuck with the kid nobody liked on a class trip, and that kid ended up bribing him into or making him pay for stuff that he wanted. And he came home in tears and said that he spent all his little bit of money that we gave him on this other kid's ice cream and whatever that kid wanted, and made him like a pushover. Like he just did it. And I said, why did you do that? Why did you? But I would have probably done the same thing. So he can definitely use some modeling. And honestly, he was like, Mom, I know you don't want to do this. Like, please do yourself a favor. Say no. Like, he knew that it wouldn't be for me. Yeah.
That is a really great point. It's just that it empowers not just you, but it empowers him too.
Right.
I think that's a beautiful thing.
I just think there's also, for me, like the big no is engaging in conversations I don't want to, that aren't healthy. Like, I think I grew up with a lot of like gossiping and criticism, and like something about getting sober, it just like this like wall went up, and I would have like a physical reaction to like people trying to like gossip with me or talk about other people. And it was strange. It was like, I can no longer tolerate passive aggressive, inauthentic, negative type. It's fine. Like, I have no problem with the emotions of anger and pain and like sadness, but those kind of like toxic behaviors, I just can't. I know that the closer I am or the more I engage in them, the closer I am to drinking. Like, I just can feel it in my body that it gets me like that much closer. And so I have to just kind of like stay away from it. I don't know if anyone else has had that.
It doesn't do any good for
Absolutely.
anyone. Gossip does nothing good for anyone. It's
gossip is, to me, gossip is a lot like talking about politics and a lot like talking about the weather. And it's a really good way to fill the silence without ever saying anything meaningful about yourself.
Yeah.
It is like you're putting up a wall and you're telling the people around you, I am not going to be vulnerable. You are not going to know anything about me. Let's talk about other people. And it makes me it makes my skin crawl.
Cringy.
Like, I've never liked gossip. It's always made me uncomfortable. I really have a hard time even like being in the presence of people who spend their time gossiping. Like the old like girls' nights that I used to go to. I haven't really done that in a really long time. When I did show up and I was sober and I wasn't just, drinking and laughing like everybody else, I was just thinking, what is wrong here? Why are we so obsessed with all of these other people that I barely even know? But we're not going to talk to each other about anything important. There's zero connecting going on at those, events, because we're all just focused on something outside of ourselves. It's just a way to fill the silence, and I cannot handle that anymore at all. I just don't go to girls' nights. I don't, if I am sitting there in a situation where people are gossiping, I will straight up leave. I'll just, sorry guys, I gotta go. And I really don't even feel apologetic for that one anymore.
It's amazing though, because it's like before, it's like, what was that? Was that part of my personality? Was it something I did? Like, I don't know. It's an unbelievable change that happens where you're like, oh no, not okay. I don't know why I tolerated that.
It's not authentic at all.
Not.
I think that's the part where it becomes not okay, is the whole inauthenticity of it. I'm so worried about what everyone else is doing. I'm completely disregarding myself. There's nothing authentic about it. So once you get sober, you start self-actualizing. And then once you do that, none of that conversation sounds fun. I mean, I'm plenty guilty of gossip, right? I was the center of it, a whole bunch of it before. It's something I avoid now completely.
How do you avoid it? Like, how do you guys like get out of situations where you're like, you know what, I just can't do it. I know in my head I'm doing it. I'm just like, I don't have that for you right now. I don't have that to give you.
I have, there's one person in particular that I can think of that it seems like the conversation always turns into gossip of some kind. And I always, okay, so I don't know how to explain this in a way that if this friend ever hears this podcast, they're not going to be so she'll say something kind of judgy about another person. That seems to be really common, right? Whether it's judging somebody else's parenting or judging how somebody else dresses or whatever. And so in the parenting instance, which has come up a few different times, I've turned that into, have you ever just like shown up and offered to help her? If there's a mom that she's like, oh my God, she just never does anything and whatever. I'm like, have you ever just showed up and been like, hey, do you need some help? Do you need do you need a break? Can I watch your kids for a few hours so you can go have some time to yourself? So I almost try to take the judgy thing and turn it into how can we problem solve for this person to make their life easier instead of just saying something negative about what they're experiencing. And that at the very least just shuts the conversation down. And then I'll bring it back around to I'll tell a story from my life or something that I've done just to try to redirect it. That's easier with one other person. I don't have enough of a big personality if I'm sitting in a group of people to try to redirect an entire conversation. But in a one-on-one conversation, I have found myself doing that several times. Let's problem solve for this person instead of judging them, and let's see if there's a way we can help them. And then also, I'm going to tell you this funny story about my dog from last week, or this embarrassing moment or whatever, and turn it back over to, because I would rather talk about me and that other person I'm there with. I would love to tell embarrassing stories or stories about my kids or what is happening in our lives, which is actually happening because half of gossip is just made up and assumed anyway. That's where the connection happens, is in talking about ourselves with other people and sharing that connection. So that's generally where I go with it. I make that sound easy, and it's not. And I have failed multiple times, but that has been so far my kind of plan of action with that.
What I hear you say, Julie, is kind of like this. If I can't say straight out no to the conversation or no to something somebody's asking me to, I'm solving the problem, right? I'm like, when I can't do a certain thing, somebody's asking me, then I'm doing it by saying, hey, ask this person, he's actually better, or this person, right? And I could just say no. You could just say in that situation when you don't want to have these conversations, no, I really don't want to talk about this, right? And I think that should really be at some point the goal, right? But I'm with you too with that strategy of saying, okay, I don't want to straight out call them out or say just plain out no, because that's my boundary. I'm going to solve the problem, right? I'm going to say, how about over here? Look over there. I gave you the solution, right? And you're kind of doing that too by saying, how about we do this and this, and divert it. But I think what would be really authentic is just to say, you know what, I really don't want to have this conversation, right? And but not like I could do it. I'm just pointing out that was kind of on my mind that I tend to go forward now with saying no by actually solving their problem, because I say no by saying, how about over here, or how about that there, right? Which is not my job really. I just need to say no. But I make it my problem, whatever they're bringing to me.
When someone's gossiping about someone, I mean, I've done this before too, and it's like, you seem like you're very concerned about what this person is doing. Why don't you have a conversation with them? They're not here right now. So, I mean, if you really do, you're showing some valid concern here. Why don't you just reach out? And
Right.
after that, it's like, oh crap, you just made me own the gossip. Like it is. I've done it before and it shut it right down. No, well, I don't want to talk to them about it. Well, I mean, talking to me about it isn't going to do any good. We're not going to solve
Yeah.
that person's problem, right? But you seem like you're visibly concerned. Talking about it
That's
here isn't going to do anything.
that's actually like brilliant though, because how often does
Yeah.
gossip show up as concern,
Yeah.
quote unquote, for another person, right? Like that's the way to make it acceptable. I'm really concerned about this person because they're doing such and such, and oh my gosh, can you believe this? Whatever. That's a brilliant way to word that. Like you should go talk to them because that is a valid concern. I love that.
It's the last thing
That
they're going
just
to want to
shuts
do.
that down.
The
Right.
last thing they're going to want to do. I've been in one. I remember one. It was at work, and there was a couple people that were essentially kind of making fun of someone, and I was like, this isn't really fair to this person because they're not even here to defend themselves. And everyone just went silent, and I was like, huh, that worked.
I have to remember that.
Yeah.
Steve coming in big.
It's like I haven't had very many opportunities to do that, but that happened the one time, and I was just, this is really uncomfortable. I was really uncomfortable in it, and we're making up stories. We're making up stories about what this person's doing and laughing about this person behind their back. How fair is that? I mean, I'm guilty of it. I've done it a lot of times, but there's nothing positive about it. All we're doing is character assassination behind someone's back. It is not fair to that person at all. And I mean, I don't want that to happen to me. Why should I do it to someone else? And so I try and make a point to not anymore. And it hurts. It's not authentic. It's back to that again. One of the things that I have written down here is not having the courage to say no and then dealing with it later. This is something I'm guilty of. Is
Yes.
saying yes because it's not my problem now. I can deal with it. I have 2 weeks to deal with it. So I'll say yes now. I don't want to do it, but it's easy. So I can say yes and I got to walk away from it. And then I just procrastinate my way to the problem. And then I'm stuck between the rock and a hard spot. And now I'm running around asking for help. I'm doing all of these things that I don't need to be doing because I didn't have the courage to say no in the first place, or at least open up the conversation or deflect it, say, you know what? Can I think about this? Can I have some time? Most of the time, I feel like I have to answer right away. And I have to give that yes or no or whatever that may be. Like it's an immediate concern. Everything is now. Hurry up, now. And it's not. Life moves on. It'll carry on. It's not like there's a fire in front of me and I have to do something about it immediately. And teaching myself how to not treat every situation like that helps reduce the immediate stress in trying to answer right away.
That is an excellent tool. Like, how often does somebody ask us to do something and you're just like your heart starts racing and you start sweating and you're like, yes, I'll do it. Like, if we all just stopped every time somebody asked us to do something and say, can I get you an answer this afternoon? Just give ourselves space to pause before we say yes or no. Like, if we made that a habit, we would probably all be a lot less overcommitted. Because for me, it's like instant reaction to just say yes. Because I want everybody to like me, by golly. And so that's a really great tool that we could probably all use.
Also, since I got sober, I've picked up quite a few hobbies, and now I have much more balance in my life. And when people come and ask me for things, I'm now thinking, and that means giving up the things that I made space for, like running, like yoga, painting, where I'm like, okay, if I say yes, that goes bye-bye. Do you want this not to happen anymore? Then say yes, right? So I challenge myself with that and say, okay, if you want to keep that balance, you got to say no more often. It didn't work when I used to think, okay, we'll take time away from my family, because that for some reason always gave, and I just work, and added that on. But now I found some kind of pleasure in, having actually a life outside of things. And now it's like, okay, if you want to keep this, you gotta say no. And then my family also has more for me, because for these hobbies, I'm home more, or I'm saying no more often. So as I said, in my professional life, I'm able to do this more. But yeah, amongst friends or other things, it's still very hard.
Yeah.
So, Kelsey, you talked about allowing others to say no to you. Something I had never really thought about, and how that effect comes back around. I think that was beautifully said tonight. Supporting your children when they say no, that was another really interesting one. Sitting through the awkwardness of the silence in between, or giving other people a chance to reply instead of taking that away from them. We talked about trying to avoid gossip and how we deal with it, and then delaying that reply with commitment so we can allow ourselves some time to think about it. Kelsey, Sonia, Antje, thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your thoughts. Really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank
for having me.
you. Yeah, this was amazing.
We'd also like to thank our listeners for sharing this space with us. Remember to subscribe or follow to keep getting new content. And if you have any comments or topic suggestions, you can email us at throughtheglassrecovery@gmail.com. We'll see you next time as we continue to explore life on the other side of alcohol.